Go ahead. What'd you say?
I just searched Baltimore. It says very unhealthy.
Yeah, right. So you're in the red. I'll
Purple.
tell you though. What's that?
Purple.
Oh, you're in the purple now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it's funny because people were tweeting at me. They're like, "This is an average summer in Northern California." In California, I'm like, yeah, but I'm in Pennsylvania. I didn't sign up for that shit.
And also, I saw yesterday a tweet that like this is the most dangerous air that Americans have been exposed to since the really bad wildfires in 2020 in California.
Really?
Yeah.
PM 2.5, fine particle matter. That's the toxin. Was looking into that a little bit. But my point is
that's what it says here.
What?
It says very unhealthy. PM 2.5, very unhealthy.
Yeah, that's the toxin that's in the air.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what it says for Baltimore.
It's the same thing. It's the same thing coming from those fires. I mean,
oh yeah. Yeah, Roth had tweeted out like a fire or a smoke like forecast yesterday or the day before through Friday, and it had Baltimore and Maryland as a whole getting hit hardest today and tomorrow.
You're probably getting what we had the last 2 days.
Yeah.
We should be unhappy with Canada about this, right? I mean,
of course.
Figure it out.
Yeah, and I mean, they contribute nothing except maple syrup. Like, you don't get the leeway to light shit on fire and affect us.
Now they're contributing a ton of PM 2.5 though, dude. A lot of PM 2.5. No, but by the way, what's going on, everybody? 4-game slate, so bear with us. Welcome to the Stochastic.com MLB Deeper Dive presented by Prize Picks. People talk about, it's normal in California, you'll be fine. It's like, I know I'll be fine, but I live out here where we have 4 seasons. Okay, it gets pretty cold in the winter. Sometimes it gets unbearably hot in the summer. I deal with that because we don't get significant earthquakes. We don't get this type of wildfires. We don't get real like hurricanes, tornadoes, you know what I mean? We take the good with the bad. You go out to California, you might fall off the face of the earth. You might get caught with a bad fire, but you're the Sunshine State. You get some wonderful Sunshine State, Florida.
That's Florida. That's Florida.
What's California? The Redwood State?
I don't know. I know they have.
Jordan, what's California? Flag. You don't know? All right. Well, it's the one that has great weather all the time.
I mean, they didn't in parts.
To be fair, they didn't. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm saying like they didn't sign up for a cripplingly cold winter with more snow than I got.
Right.
I'm just saying, when you move out to the Northeast.
Oh, Golden State, obviously.
The Golden State. God, we're dumb.
It's a baseball show.
It could be the Sunshine State, though, and nobody would argue it, right?
I think people in San Francisco would, and Northern California.
Yeah, but like 75% maybe. I don't know. Point is, you know what it's like out here. You're not necessarily the Northeast, but we don't get hit with most bad, catastrophic stuff. We just kind of suffer.
You've been the one getting tornadoes recently. I haven't really had to deal with that.
Yeah, but they're like F1s. We had a weird spell of them 2 years ago. I didn't get hit by them, but I'm saying we're not getting hit with middle Midwest type insane tornadoes that are.
Yeah, I'll never understand. I mean, I did live in the Midwest and I did like it for the time I was there, but I'll never understand people that choose that. Like, you get shitty weather in terms of temperatures,
tornadoes.
You don't get an ocean. You get tornadoes.
Yeah.
Like, I have no idea why people choose that.
I mean,
I don't like living in the Mid-Atlantic, but like, I can't imagine choosing to live in the Midwest.
Cost of living, right? It's got to be.
That's true. It is nice how inexpensive everything is.
It's got to be cost of living because that's what I'm saying. In California, it's beautiful, but you have wildfires, you have earthquakes, stuff like that, mudslides. I think Florida, you get the hurricanes. Texas, you get the hurricane. All of those places come with risk. With us, we don't get anything great, but we don't get anything awful either. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, pretty much.
The Midwest gets nothing great and a lot of awful.
Yeah, I mean, Guitar Z-Man said clean air is a plus. Yeah, that you don't like outdoorsy stuff is nice in the Midwest. It's nice like not having all the city pollution and stuff. But I don't know. I actually kind of like Midwest vacations. They're really relaxing to me. But living there would get boring.
I'm pretty sure California's air is very, very clean. No,
I mean, California has LA, so
I know, but I'm pretty sure. Like, I was looking up like the cleanest air in cities today. I went down a rabbit hole too on air quality. Spoiler alert: not great in India these days. And I'm pretty sure like there's the certain cities in California had like among cities had some of the best air quality in the world. Could be wrong. I don't know. I'm in
I thought LA was like notoriously bad for that.
Yeah, with the smog, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm not saying specifically LA. I'm saying I think there's some other spots in California that are very clean. Could be wrong. You guys can fact check me. I don't know. I'm no expert. I'm just learning this today. But let's talk some baseball. Happy to have you guys with us. We got 4 games to talk about, not 5, because that Yankees game is the second of a double. A lot of what we have: Philly postponed yesterday, Yankees game postponed yesterday from this air pollution, little PM 2.5 wreaking havoc in the Northeast. But we got 4 games today. Out of the gate, how does pitching and how does stacks look for you just from a 4-game slate? Is there anything that really stands out?
Well, we have Spencer Strider, so that always stands out because obviously he's the best strikeout pitcher you're going to get on any slate, but it really stands out on a 4-gamer. It's interesting too because you do have another legitimate ace in Framber Valdez, but he's got a pretty brutal matchup with Toronto, so that creates an interesting point. You do have quality pitching for the most part for a 4-game slate, not necessarily in terms of you want to roster every guy, but in terms of looking at the teams against them, there's not a ton that stands out. Like the Angels the Braves have the highest implied run total on the slate, just shy of 5, going up against Justin Verlander. You don't have any truly bad pitchers on this slate.
Well, let's dive into it. What do you okay? Best air quality among any city in the country.
What counts as a city?
I don't know.
Probably like Boise or something.
Honolulu.
Denver.
Honolulu, Hawaii.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's all Hawaii. Yep. Maybe we could move there. Would you live there?
Hawaii?
Yeah.
I don't really see why not. That's one where like if I lived there, I think it would have to be like if I had like no existing family left. Because like I'm not making that I'm not making that flight.
That's when you just disconnect from everything.
Right.
That's a great point.
Yeah, but even if I did that, I think I'd still be more likely to go to like I don't know, like Montana or some shit. But yeah, like I'm not making the hey, it's Thanksgiving, I'm gonna fly to Maryland from Hawaii trip ever.
Yeah, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho would be my spot for sure, which is not far from Montana.
I've heard great things about Boise.
About Boise?
Yeah,
I've heard great things about Idaho in general.
Yeah, one of my friends in law school was from Boise. He was from Connecticut, then went through Boise. I think he might have gone to college there. I don't know. I don't remember, but he was in Boise for a while and said it was amazing.
Well, happy to have you guys with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. That stuff goes a very long way for us, and we appreciate you atoning for your sins out of the gate here. Live Before Lock coming up after this. We got no basketball today. It's back tomorrow, though. So 2 hours of baseball. Stick around with us. And let's dive into this. So first one up on the day, Houston and Toronto, 8.5 run total. Houston slight favorites on the road. Framber Valdez, Jose Berrios. So, I mean, just looking at top pitcher tool right now, it is funny because the top 2 percentage, you have Spencer Strider, 50%. The guy's just an absolute. Is it fair to call him a robot at this point?
I mean, pretty much. Like he's had some disappointing games recently, but then he still just gets so many strikeouts where it's like, oh, he ended up being fine.
But like a disappointing game for him is 25 fantasy points.
Right.
Which is bizarre. But yeah, just the strikeout. We're not even on that game yet, but to have 113 strikeouts and 69 and 2/3 innings is insane. Like almost average. How many strikeouts per inning would that be? Just
would what be?
Or per 9. I'm just thinking like his strikeouts per 9 have to be, not that that's a relevant stat, but just thinking about
for the season.
Yeah.
14.6.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And a 41% actual strikeout rate. So we'll get to him.
And walking less than 10% of hitters, like he's insanely good.
Right. To have that strikeout stuff, but also control over like
the only pitcher that rivals him in terms of that is now undergoing Tommy John surgery.
When I saw Jacob deGrom tear up, it made me sad.
Yeah, I still haven't actually watched that interview.
It made me sad, dude, because we know how like he's I think it might have been you that said the other day, if he didn't get hurt, didn't you say he could have been, what you said?
Yeah. If he just had a healthy career, he very realistically could have ended up being the best pitcher that has ever pitched. And like,
honestly,
obviously that's a big if because he's been hurt a lot.
right. And a lot of other pitchers you could say that about who also got hurt.
So that's kind of where I disagree though. Like people were saying that to me on Twitter. No other pitchers put up the numbers DeGrom puts up when he's healthy. Like
That's
there's
true.
a lot of
and
really
has
good
had
pitchers.
this many injuries.
Right, yeah, that too. But like, like somebody said Jose Fernandez, that one I could at least see because like he was really young, he was already dominant and certainly could have gotten better. But like there's a lot of guys where it's like, somebody said like Lincecum. Lincecum, even at his peak, wasn't putting up the numbers that DeGrom puts up.
No.
And like that's the thing. Like I think it's really easy for people not to realize how dominant DeGrom is because you can very easily just say like, oh yeah, he's really, really good. And so is XYZ. But then you realize that like he's twice as good as like the next best pitcher, basically.
Yeah, it is a shame, and it upset me to see him crying like that because not crying, he wasn't inconsolable, but he was definitely like, man, this again, here we go, and again having a great season, like you said, just an absolute stud. But anyway, back to the point at hand. Strider, 50% top 2 pitcher probability today, 63% ownership. Then you get down. This is where it gets weird, right? Framber Valdez. And not weird because we can explain this very easily based on salaries. But Framber Valdez and Reed Detmers also both have 28% top 2 probabilities on DraftKings. Top 2 because you have to play 2 pitchers. Except Framber Valdez is getting 17% ownership because Strider is expensive and it's tough to play both of them. Detmer's getting 47%. So Valdez is kind of in no man's land. Expensive pitcher, not as good as Strider, but good, not a great matchup, but also getting no ownership.
Yeah, it's a really interesting spot. One thing that stood out to me as kind of surprising is that Detmers is actually projecting about the same as Valdez. We have Detmers and Valdez both at 16.1 DraftKings points. I expected, before I had looked at anything other than the matchups, I expected Valdez to project quite a bit behind Strider, but to still project clearly as the second best pitcher because in terms of actual ability, he is the second best pitcher. He's very, very good. 2.7 xFIP is actually better than Strider. 26.9% K percentage is up from what you've seen in the past for Valdez. Great ground ball pitcher, doesn't give up power. So I was a little surprised that he's not projecting better, but it is a very tough matchup against the Blue Jays in Toronto. 4-run implied total. A lot of right-handed bats in this lineup. Not that that's the end of the world. He's held righties to a 303 expected WOBA, 27% strikeout percentage. His numbers this year are actually better against righties. But it is a very dangerous matchup. And like you were saying, it does create a pretty interesting situation in tournaments because Valdez and Detmers, project the same. They have similar top 2 pitcher percentages. One is $4,000 less expensive than the other. So you're going to get a lot more ownership going to Detmers, and you should. But at the same time, 17% ownership on a 4-game slate to one of the best pitchers in the American League is still pretty appealing in tournaments.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it comes down to, right? I mean, on one hand, look, Detmer and Valdez have essentially the same K rate on the season. Here's the one huge difference, is that you just don't get a lot of innings from Reed Detmers. Now, is that something that is going to be sustained throughout the course of the season? Because he's also had a handful of ugly games too. But we know that he has legitimate strikeout stuff, and we know that he's cheap. He's going up against the Cubs team that strikes out. And I'm jumping around here just because I think if we're not providing context on a 4-game slate, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, and also if we're not providing context, this show's going to be over in 20 minutes because there's only so much to say about stuff individually.
But this is the important stuff when you're looking at the tools and you're seeing like Valdez is such an outlier. Detmers clearly doesn't. He's damn. How many times do you think he has pitched 6+ innings this year?
I was actually kind of just looking through it. I didn't find the answer, but I'm guessing it's been like once or twice.
Once, 6.1 innings. Now he's gone a couple 5 2/3, but that's one of kind of the drawbacks on a guy like this, right? That and it's not like he can't throw a decent amount of pitches. He's been in the 90s, up over 100 in one game, 95. I guess that's what it comes down to. The leash.
I'll say that there's two concerns for me there. One, he's not the most pitch efficient guy. He does strike out 26.5% of hitters. So obviously that takes up some pitches. He walks 9% of hitters. That takes up pitches. But the other thing is, I think to some extent, it may be by design that he's not going deep in the games as well. I think that outside of the games where he's pitching really well, the Angels are probably trying to avoid him going through the order for the third time. If you look at his splits this year, he's faced 90 batters the first time through, 90 batters the second time through. He's only faced 47 batters the third time through the order. So, and he hasn't, like, he's given up a 568 WOBA. Obviously, that's a very small sample, but the fact that he's so infrequently faced those hitters is, I think, twofold. One, again, that he is driving up his pitch count, and that's not allowing him to get deep in the games. But I would expect that it's likely that outside of the games where he's truly dominating, the Angels are also erring on the side of like, okay, cool, you got us through 5 innings, you faced everybody twice, now get out before you ruin everything.
Right. Yeah, you did enough. Thank you. Yeah. Hasn't allowed a lot of power though. That's one thing. Definitely
hasn't. I was, because it is a dangerous matchup for him against the Cubs. And so I was, looking at that, and I think that, we'll get to that game obviously, but I think the Cubs are an interesting stack given how much ownership is coming into Detmers, but it's really difficult, or it was really difficult. I was trying to find like one or two individual bats that I could make a case for, and it's tough because he's striking righties out 28% of the time, 135 expected ISO. He's been very good at both of those things. The only negative for him really, other than the fact the Cubs do have a good offense, particularly against left-handed pitching, but it's, that he doesn't really go deep in the games, but that's offset mostly by the fact he's $6,500.
How tough do you think it's going to be to get to, or how do you think there's any point to getting to Strider and Valdez lineups? Because I actually just ran the lineup generator right now, and I locked Valdez in, because my assumption is if I lock Detmers in or if I lock Strider in, I'm just not going to get a lot of Valdez. But if you lock Valdez, you're going to get some Strider. Second lineup that generated was Cleveland stack, a 5-man Cleveland stack, because you're not paying an exorbitant amount for them. Just looking through some of these lineups, I don't think you're going to get a ton. Here's another one, Cleveland stack. Like, is that what you're going to get funneled? All of these are Cleveland stacks that have Strider and Valdez.
Pretty much, I think so.
Oh, here's a Cubs
so far
one too. Here's a Cubs one too.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of Cubs. So right now, and I'm trying to combine them together for the sake of this, but I have 3,000 lineups built right now in Fantasy Cruncher. 1,500 are 5-3 stacks on DraftKings. 1,500 are 5-2 stacks. I know of the first of the 5-3 1,500s, 51 lineups had Strider and Valdez, so not many, and it was very heavy on getting to the Guardians, which makes sense because they are cheap. They do project pretty well. So I think not only is it going to be kind of difficult to do, but you're also going to see some overlap there. Of the 3,000 total lineups that I've made so far, only 109 have Valdez plus Strider. So, it is doable, but it is going to force you to a lot of Cleveland. It's basically Cleveland and the Angels showing up a ton if in those lineups, Boston being the third team, Cubs being the fourth team. It's mostly getting you away from, the Braves, the Astros, obviously the Blue Jays.
I guess the one interesting factor, though, is that there's no real mega chalk stack on a 4-game slate today.
Yeah, it's very flat ownership from a stack standpoint. There are 3 teams, the Guardians, the Angels, the Braves, projected for 15 to 18% aggregate ownership on DraftKings. 3 more teams between 10 and 12%. The Cubs, the Astros, and the Red Sox. The Blue Jays also at 10%. And then you have the Mets at the bottom, not surprisingly, at 5%. But yeah, ownership pretty flat. Top stack percentages are pretty flat. 6 of the 8 teams playing are between 11 and 16%, give or take, in top stack percentage. So it goes back to what I said at the top. It's an interesting slate because, yes, you do have an ace and a half in Strider and Valdez, but you don't have any bad pitching.
Right. Ryan, did the Philly game get canceled? No, they shouldn't postpone this one. I took the dog for a walk today, no problem. Felt fine. Like I could actually see the clouds and the sun. Didn't look like it was the apocalypse.
Yeah, so I forget what that's like.
Does it look crazy out there right now?
Not crazy, just really like You would think it was cloudy. Like it's just like hazy and gray.
Yeah. So I said that to my wife yesterday. I was like, if I just went out there at first, I would think it was hard overcast. But then I look at the forecast, I look at my phone and it says just plentiful sunshine.
I didn't even think to see like what my phone thinks it's doing outside.
Right. Like there's no clouds out there. But today I could see everything.
Mine says mostly cloudy.
Does it? I didn't take the dog out yesterday. My daughter at daycare, they didn't take them outside the last 2 days, which I thought was good. They could have yesterday. It probably would have been or today. It probably would have been fine. But yesterday just smelled like a bonfire.
I was gonna say I didn't do anything outside yesterday, but I did just like walk out on the balcony and it smelled like a campfire.
Yeah. No, Ryan, it's not. Jordan's not slacking. It's not on the sidebar because it's not on the slate.
Yeah, Phillies game's on the 4:00 afternoon slate.
Yeah, it's a 6:05 game. So nah. Anyway, let's get back to Houston and Toronto. I think we set the table pretty well there. Before we do, though, shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. As always, they're doing big things, especially in the postseason for the NBA. $1 million opportunity every single day of the NBA postseason. And you know what? Sometimes people make good lineups. Sometimes they make terrible lineups. But we've seen a few people hit the 80K recently. None of that really matters. Here's what matters, okay, is that, let's see. We got someone locked in today. MLB, full MLB for the Millie. Lance Lynn, over 2.5 earned. Valdez, over 5 Ks. Rafael Devers, over 1.5 total bases. Jose Ramirez. All right. None of that matters. You enter a 6-pick flex, play $5 or more, and you have a shot at them giving you a card to win $1 million. It's one person every day throughout the NBA postseason. Pretty sweet. We've had a fun time talking about it. What you should really care about is the fact that if you sign up for Prize Picks, particularly, you're in a non-legal betting state, you're looking to scratch that itch, it's a great site. Over or under or higher or lower, you just go and look at any sport. They have insane things too, like higher or lower on dunks, or on personal fouls and crazy stuff for football, basketball, baseball, sports that you might know, but I certainly don't. They have everything. You're just combining them, building a card, and watching yourself win. If you hit 5 of 5, you're 10xing. But unlike a traditional sports book, where if you hit 4 or 5, you make nothing. If you hit 4 or 5 on Prize Picks, you still 2x. You still make money on 3 of 5, right? 6 of 6, you're 25xing. They also have, what are they, Jordan? They got 3 Taco Tuesdays for right now? Hot dogs, because it's not Tuesday. That makes sense. all that PM 2.5 has gotten to my brain. Framber Valdez, so they discount all of this. Valdez down from what is that, 5Ks? Justin Verlander. Oh man, they did that guy dirty on the $1 million entry. Not that you can use it there. Verlander, 4 strikeouts. That's discounted. Spencer Strider, 6.5 strikeouts. So, dude, they discount these. If you were to look at these from an EV perspective, these are all massively plus EV spots that you're getting to take advantage of. A lot of days they do free squares, but I'm burying the lead. So hold on, let me back up. You click the link, you sign up, and you deposit. You get 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100, right? So you double your bankroll immediately. You also get all of the tools that we have in the Stochastic Plus Platinum subscription, $120 value across the board. Not just baseball, basketball, PGA, NASCAR, MMA, everything across the board. Hockey, you've got it. $120 value, including the premium Discord. So if you're not there yet, use the link. Otherwise, we can't find you. You can't just take your word for it. $120 value, everything that we have in the premium package, plus 100% first match deposit bonus up to $100. So check it out. Link in the description and in chat. Take advantage of those discounted plays today, too. Perfect time to get in on it and really exploit that. Give yourself an edge in all of your cards. All right. We talked about Valdez. How much Valdez do you have in the lineups that you ran? Not with Strider, but how much do you have?
And this is just in Fantasy Crunchers. This isn't lineups that I'm.
No, I know.
playing.
I mean, of the ones you crunched.
Yeah. He's showing up like 20.5% of the time for me.
What about
so basically all that's saying, again, I'm not saying that like I'm playing 20% Valdez. I haven't gotten that far. It's telling me that I think Valdez should be about 20% on.
Right. What about Berrios on the other side?
Barrios showing up around 20% also. So same thing. And that reflects the top pitchers tool as well. At least, somewhat. We have Valdez 29% chance being top 2. Again, I have him like 20, but still going a little bit under owned. And same for Barrios. We have him at 22%. I have him at 20, 18% ownership. So both guys going a little bit under owned, but both guys also in very difficult matchups, not particularly favorably priced. 10-4 for Valdez, you're paying essentially full salary despite the matchup. Barrios at 8,800 is pretty expensive too. He has gotten it back together a bit. He struggled last year, but this year back to a 3.9 xFIP, 23% K percentage. He is better against righties than lefties, but obviously most of the righties in the Astros lineup are very good, at least at the top. It does set up really well for Alvarez and Tucker against him. He does still have left-handed power issues, so that's always going to be a concern when you have to face Alvarez and Tucker. But both of those guys showing up around 20% for me. Just good pitchers in difficult matchups that aren't getting a price discount.
Yeah, Barrios 176 x ISO against righties, 196 against lefties. Do you make of anything that Valdez has a elevated x ISO against same-handed bats this year?
Not really. He's only thrown 184 pitches to lefties, and the assumption should always be that pitchers are going to be better against same-handed hitters. A lot of pitchers you can point to a reason why maybe the reverse splits would be real. I don't really see that with Valdez. It's not like he's a super change-up heavy pitcher. That's normally the one thing that will immediately point you to somebody that's likely to be reverse splits. Previous years in his career, that hasn't been the case. Last year, sub 100 expected ISO to lefties, 253 expected WOBA. 2021, 312 expected WOBA to lefties, 148 expected ISO. I don't expect him to continue having these issues.
Any other bats worth talking about here?
On an individual level, I don't really think so. There's nothing from Toronto that's going to stand out as far as Valdez struggles with this, so this hitter looks good. It's more so if you're going to the Blue Jays, you're just saying, let's hope Valdez doesn't have it today. I'm getting a really high upside Toronto team just based on the quality of the hitters, and they're 10% owned on a 4-game slate. That's a perfectly reasonable argument, but there's no flaw in Valdez's game that you can really look to target. I mentioned it with Houston. The biggest flaw that you can find with Barrios, or really with the biggest flaw of either of the pitchers in this game, is that Barrios does struggle with that left-handed power, which you only have 2 left-handed bats in the Astros lineup. They just happen to be extremely good. So Alvarez and Tucker individually stand out. But other than that, the Astros to me are pretty much the same as the Blue Jays as far as you're not expecting them to necessarily have success against Barrios based on what Barrios typically does, but they're still really good hitters at modest ownership that can put up a huge game.
All right,
and Barrios is not as good as Valdez either.
Sure. Let's talk about Boston and Cleveland. Boston plus 120 money line on the road, 8.5 run total here. Matt Dermody. All right. So this season at AAA, 44 innings, 8 starts. He has a 24.5% strikeout rate, 4.7% walk rate. So none of that looks particularly bad. 3.95 xFIP. It's funny though, because you look at Cleveland, they're kind of the tale of two teams when it comes to DFS against lefties too. They have a 84 WRC plus, which is just absolutely awful. 124 ISO against lefties, trash, 29th in the league. But at the same time, they only strike out at a 19% clip, 27th, so 4th lowest in the league. They're a team that puts the ball in play, but just on a miserable level. So any interest at all in Dermody on a 4-game slate? He's getting about 10% right now, 13% top 2 probability, so slight positive leverage score, but hard to get excited. He's, by the way, minimum salary.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that you're getting excited about, I guess. You're not getting excited about going to him, but like you said, he put up good enough strikeout numbers at AAA. He was in the KBO for most of last season. Also spent time at AAA with the Cubs. But this year at AAA for the Red Sox, striking out 24.5% of hitters, 4.06 FIP. He projects, depending what projection model you're looking at, for like an 18 to 22% K percentage, call it 20%. It's just another guy that should be like 6K or 6,500 instead of 4K. So especially on a slate with Strider, it does make some sense to take a chance on him, hope that you just get, a decent start and move on. Like you said, Cleveland, not not a very good strikeout matchup, but they've been bad offensively this year against both, pitchers of either handedness. Even going back to last year, at the start of last season, their active roster has a 95 WRC plus against left-handed pitching. They're not a very good offense, and it is a 4K price tag. So he does make some sense. We have him as a top 2 scoring pitcher about 14% of the time, 14% ownership. So nothing really standing out there. In the crunch that I ran, he showed up about 16% of the time. So same page.
Someone asked if we could, and my fault. Detroit Philly is on the FanDuel slate.
Play Zach Wheeler and for the Phillies.
Yeah, I was going to say Zach Wheeler. I can tell you too, 33%. He has the same ownership as Spencer Strider. So there's that. He's 10-8. Strider's 11-4. Top pitcher probability here is 20%, 18.5%. The Strider's 20.3. They both have negative leverage, but that makes sense on a slate like this. I mean, surely Zach Wheeler just makes for a pretty decent play.
Yeah, 100%. I think that Wheeler is a much closer pitcher to Strider on tonight's slate than Valdez is, for example. Wheeler has very similar strikeout stuff to identical strikeout stuff to Valdez
way
this year.
Better matchup.
Yeah, way better matchup. His numbers this year are really, really close to Valdez, actually. Same exact strikeout percentage, 5.4% walk percentage to 5.1, 0.66 home runs per 9 to 0.68, 2.85 FIP to 2.87. I do still think Valdez is the slightly better pitcher overall, but you're getting a very, very comparable pitcher, but instead of facing the Blue Jays, he's facing the Tigers. So Wheeler looks really good and, is a little bit less expensive. Like you said, he is pulling similar ownership, a little bit less. I think that you kind of can't go wrong between those two.
Does it make any difference? I got to ask you this. Does it make any difference to you that Framber Valdez is getting 3% ownership? Also, he's basically the same price as Strider.
Right. I mean, Valdez is definitely going, if the 3.5% number is true, Valdez is definitely going under owned. It just becomes, is that the under owned spot you want to target, or are there bats that end up looking better? You're definitely giving up a good amount in projection if you go to Valdez, but from a range of outcome standpoint, he certainly can still beat those guys. Like I said, he's basically the same pitcher this year as Wheeler. He's still an elite ground ball pitcher, very, very good at preventing runs, can work deep in the game. So still a very, very good pitcher, where in large field tournaments, it is somewhat tempting that he's getting such little ownership, but he is clearly a worse option than Wheeler and Strider.
And just real quick on bats here. Philly bats obviously look pretty good here, especially at home at Citizens Bank Park as it's warming up, but anything specific
about
Philly bats?
No, we have a guy pitching for Detroit that's made 17 relief appearances this year, no starts, hasn't been dominant out of the bullpen, at least in terms of strikeouts either. So the Phillies bats are just going to look good. I do think that they stand out a little bit more because of what we were just saying. The 4 games that are on the DraftKings slate, you have solid pitching everywhere. You don't have, Dermody would be the closest thing, I guess, but you don't have anybody that looks as bad as Detroit's pitcher. So it is going to make the Phillies bats stand out.
All right. Good stuff. Let's go back to Boston and Cleveland here. I think we covered a lot of it just as far as Dermody goes. What about Savali?
Middle of the pack guy for me. Not a bad pitcher. Threw 83 pitches in his return from the injured list last time out. He had thrown, I think, 88, if I remember correctly, in his final rehab start. So we shouldn't expect him to be overly limited here. It is a tough matchup against Boston. He's second from the bottom in top 1 pitcher percentage on FanDuel. He's third from the bottom in top 2 pitcher percentage on DraftKings. 18.8% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. 17% ownership. Showing up in my crunches 24% of the time. So yeah, I mean, he's another one where it's a tough matchup. He's a solid enough pitcher. He looks okay here. The way that the pitching is showing up for me when I crunch lineups is Strider as the clear 1, Detmers as the clear 2, and then Savali, Valdez, Barrios, Verlander sort of just lumped together.
All right. I don't know how many times I have to say this. The Phillies game, people are screaming in all caps. The Phillies game is not canceled. It is at 6:05. It is on the DraftKings slate.
FanDuel
or
slate.
FanDuel slate. It is not on the DraftKings slate. We
Yeah,
clear?
the game that is canceled on DraftKings is the second game of the Yankees doubleheader.
Right, because a game was postponed yesterday.
Right. So the game isn't even canceled. DraftKings just isn't counting the scoring. Philadelphia was never on the DraftKings slate. Their slate starts an hour after the Phillies game.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay. What about hitters for Boston and Cleveland today? Anybody stand out to you in this one?
I wouldn't say stand out, but like we were kind of talking about before, Cleveland does have the highest stack score on DraftKings because they're so cheap. 27.5% chance of being the top value stack, 13.5% chance of being the top stack. So they're fourth in top stack percentage, but they're not separated by much compared to any of the other teams. And they do pull away in terms of top values. So if you are trying to go Strider Valdez, that's probably the most likely team that you'll do it with. If you want to go Strider and just pay up for bats elsewhere, Strider and Acuna together, Strider, Acuna, Olsen, stuff like that. The Guardians are going to allow you to do that as well. So 4.6 implied run total is actually the third highest on the slate as well. It's only trailing Atlanta and the Angels. So as bad as they've been, they are facing the most unproven pitcher in Dermody. There is still upside there, even though they've really struggled. On the other side for the Red Sox, Savali is a pretty good pitcher, but you do have a lot of talent for Boston. Going back to the start of last season, nothing that really stands out in a negative way for Savali. 159 expected ISO with a 26% K percentage against lefties. That's predominantly what you're getting from the Red Sox. Jarren Duran is leading off. Yoshida's hitting second. Devers and Casas hitting 4-5. Those guys are left-handed. So 4 lefties in the top 5, Justin Turner being in the middle. Savali's not bad against righties either. 135 expected ISO there. Does have a lower strikeout percentage at 20.5%. But the Red Sox are just another team where nothing really stands out. Like there's no true weakness when you look at Savali. It's more so if you go to the Red Sox, you're just saying like, look, they have a bunch of good hitters in their lineup. This offense is projected to be not unowned, but lower owned than Cleveland and the Angels and the Braves. And they do still have plenty of upside, but there's nothing in particular that I really like.
Cleveland is interesting though, because Dermody, he's got a decent K rate and he's minimum salary, probably worth a dart throw. But this is a guy who's bounced in between the majors and AAA for 8 straight years.
Right. He's probably not very good.
8 years, dude, since 2016. Granted, like quick cups of coffee in the majors, then comes back down. But that's a lot of years to be just AAA, couple starts or innings at MLB, AAA, and back.
Yeah, perseverance, I guess. Like it's kind of crazy, like because he got he thinking about it, he probably he gets to AAA in 2016, 15 games there. It's like I'm getting to the major soon, and then it's just like no, you kind of just are living at AAA.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a career minor leaguer.
He's a 4A guy basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. And the funny thing is you mentioned it, but Cleveland, it's not like they're just, a lot of times you'll see a top value stack, but they're just not really a great stack anywhere else. 10.8% top stack probability. Look at the other teams in the top stack tool. Cubs, 11%, Houston, 11, Philly. Sorry, I'm on FanDuel, but I think even going to DraftKings, you're going to see a lot of similar numbers there for sure. They're all grouped in together.
Yeah, the Dermody and Cleveland spot is one of those spots where I don't really like either side, but when you look at the pricing, it's really tough for neither one to end up giving you useful plays, because if Dermody doesn't pitch well enough that you're happy you rostered him at 4K, that means the Guardians did a pretty good amount offensively. And considering how inexpensive the Guardians are, with the exception of 5K Jose Ramirez, which for him isn't even that expensive, if they do enough offensively for a 4K pitcher not to be a good play, they kind of have to be good plays at their prices. So it's just one of those weird spots where there's just like no salary coming into either side, and one of them kind of has to win out.
Who has some controversial tweets? I'd love to know this. Are they talking about Dermody or Adam Scherer?
I assume they're talking about me. No, he's supposedly got some controversy. I don't know who that's about then.
No, I would think it's about Dermody. I don't know. I'd love to read them. Ryan Laffy, what is the top stack on FanDuel for today? Well, if you use the
I
Prize
assume
Picks
Phillies.
link, you don't have to ask me. No, I'm just kidding. Happy to tell you that. Let's see. Top stack on FanDuel right now. As far as stack score and stack percentage, I can give you both of those. Atlanta, 14.7% top stack probability. But mind you, a lot of these are very close. Stack score Atlanta at 12.5. But as Adam mentioned earlier, there's a lot of teams with pretty concentrated stack score there. Anything else for Boston and Cleveland? You want to keep going here?
No, I quickly searched Matt Dermody on Twitter, but I didn't see anything.
Nothing good?
Nothing.
By the way, thank you guys for hitting that 100 thumbs up. We only asked once and we're there already. 500 people with us. Appreciate you. Greatly appreciate you. Helps us out a ton. You know that. All right, let's talk about the New York Mets and the Atlanta Braves. Oh, excuse me. Justin Verlander, Spencer Strider, 8.5 run total here. Mets plus 155 on the road. You and I, it's funny. You and I have been talking about a lot of these, aging pitchers a lot lately. Justin Verlander being another one. He's in his 40s. Man is 40 years old. The strikeout stuff has not really been there this year. 20.5%. He's walking more batters than he has over the years as well. And he's also sitting with a 4.39 xFIP, 4.54 FIP. What do you make right now of Verlander and also the fact that Atlanta grades out so well today?
Yeah, so I don't think Verlander is as good as he has been in the past. That shouldn't be a hot take. But
he's not bad, is what you're going to say.
Yeah. I think he's better than he's shown so far this year. He's made 6 starts, so you're still talking a pretty small sample, 36 innings pitched. Strikeout numbers are way down even from last year. And when you talk about somebody like Verlander, that should be like, you should assume it's going to come back, at least to what he was doing last year. Probably doesn't get back to what he was doing in 2018, 2019, when he was striking out, 33+% of hitters. But he had a 27.8% K percentage last year. It's only 20.5% this year. So I do think you see it bounce back at least somewhat. And then that's also backed up if you look at the teams he's faced so far. First start of the season was at Detroit. Obviously, good matchup there. Struck out 5 guys. Struck out 7 guys in 7 innings against the Reds in his second start. But then you get Tampa Bay, 3 strikeouts, tough team to strike out, good offense. 5 strikeouts in 8 innings against Cleveland. Not a good offense. He went 8 innings, but not an easy team to strike out. Then he was at Colorado, 2 strikeouts there in 5 innings. Pitching in cores obviously is not ideal. Then his most recent start was against Toronto. He did pick up 8 Ks in 6 innings there, but he has had some pretty tough matchups, or at least tough ballparks to pitch in. So another reason why I think those strikeout numbers do come up. But at Atlanta is another tough spot. So that doesn't mean that they have to all come back tonight. It is a pretty appealing matchup for the Braves. Verlander has had power issues so far this year. 195 expected ISO to lefties, 170 to righties. Matt Olson looks very good, albeit expensive at 5,800. Clearly, Acuna is always a good play. Riley's pretty cheap at 4,800. No Sean Murphy does make the Braves stack a little bit less appealing, but you still have a catcher batting cleanup with Travis d'Arnaud. Rosario's cheap. So, it's kind of surprising to me that the Braves run total is as high as it is, but it is a version of Verlander that hasn't been as sharp this year. It is relatively warm in Atlanta. It looks like the wind's blowing out around 10-ish miles per hour as well. So you do have the highest implied run total on the slate. You're getting plenty of ownership coming in. I wouldn't say it's problematic, though. 17% projected ownership, 15% chance of being the top stack on DraftKings. So no real issue there. And I'm pulling it up now to see how it looks individually, because one thing to keep in mind with the Braves too, when you look at their aggregate ownership, a lot of times it can be really misleading, because Ronald Acuna is basically always going to be getting ownership. And it's kind of the same thing today. Every hitter on the Braves is projected for at least 10% ownership on DraftKings, but Acuna is coming in at 28%. The next highest guy is d'Arnaud at 19, 18 to Riley, 16 to Ozuna, 15 to Harris, 13 to Olson. So you have them more in line with that, 13, 14% kind of average, excluding Acuna.
He threw 117 pitches last start, too.
That's insane.
Yeah, he's still
in 6 innings.
Dude's a horse.
Yeah, I hadn't even noticed that.
It's crazy. But no, you make some good points here. So with all of that in mind, then, how much Verlander do you expect to get to today?
Yeah, I mean, he's another one. He's showing up 20 to 25% of the time in my crunches. We have him with 13% projected ownership. So that is interesting to me. We have him less owned than Barrios. We have him less owned than Valdez, who obviously is a lot more expensive. Less ownership coming into him than Savali. It does all make sense from a median standpoint because he is facing a really good Braves team that has the highest implied run total on the slate, but he is likely to have much better strikeout stuff than Savali. He's likely still a better strikeout pitcher than Barrios. If you look at the projection systems on Fangraphs, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying, where you should be expecting him to get closer to what he did last year. The bat projects him for 26.5%. Zips is at 26.3. ATC is at 27.2. None of these projection systems are below 26%. So you should be expecting a bounce back in terms of strikeout stuff from Verlander. I'm not confident in him here. I think the matchup clearly sucks, but the fact that he is getting less ownership than pretty much every other similar pitcher is interesting to me. Because like I said, the way guys are showing up for me, it's Strider is the clear one, Detmers is the clear two, factoring in salary. Savali at 24%, Valdez, Barrios, Verlander all at 20 in terms of how often they're showing up as optimal. Verlander's getting less ownership than everybody in that group.
How do you feel about non-Strider lineups today?
I don't love them. So it's not the worst thing in the world. The nice thing is that you do get a gap in salary. So with Strider at 12K, and the next most expensive pitcher on DraftKings being Valdez at 10.4, even if you're using Valdez as your SP1, you can do some stuff that you couldn't do if you go to Strider. But especially if you're just using two of those mid-range guys, you're going Savali, Verlander, Savali, Barrios, Verlander, whatever you prefer, or, Detmers, Verlander, Savali, any of those combinations, you can make much, much different lineups than the Strider lineup. So, instead of mixing in these Cleveland bats or, Cubs bats or Boston bats or whatever people are doing for value, you can actually get to some, payoff options. You can get to the full expensive Brave stack. You can mix in some Astros, some Blue Jays, easier. So there are different things you can do. That aspect is pretty appealing, but he's still showing up as optimal 50% of the time for me, which is really high, obviously.
Yeah, it certainly is. We talked a lot about him. I don't think we need to dig too much deeper into it. Outside of that, how you feel about bats from either side of this one today?
From either side of the Braves game?
Yeah. Braves, Mets. Because
the Braves, the Braves look good. The Mets don't. You can still make a case for the Mets simply because they do have good hitters and it's a 4-game slate and they're the lowest owned team on the slate. But Strider's really, really good. And it's not even like he's one of these pitchers that you can really look at and say, well, he's really good. He strikes everybody out, but he gives up home runs. He doesn't even really do that. 164 expected ISO to righties this year, 119 to lefties, 258 expected ISO to lefties, 263 to righties. If you're stacking against Strider, it is purely for one, he's going to be 60% owned. So on the off chance he does pitch poorly, you're now competing with less than half the field. Two, the Mets are the lowest owned team. So if they go off, you have, the least amount of competition. That's pretty much it. There's no, there's nothing you're looking at and saying I think Strider's going to struggle. It's not even like the Garrett Cole spots where you're I think I can get 3 home runs against him or something. There's no reason to expect that at all. It's purely just a ownership play if you're doing it.
All right. We had a super chat from Putin's Cumrag. All right. That's creative. Bo Bichette, over or under 1.5 total bases. Our Bet Pro tool has this. We haven't projected at 1.1. The over on 1.5 bases is, we have it -6% EV. I will say, Adam, I just pulled it up right now. He only has 47 plate appearances against lefties this year, but 2% K rate and a 190 WRC plus, 273 ISO. So that's pretty wild.
Wait, who?
Bichette.
Oh, okay.
Versus lefties. I'm saying he struck out 2% of the time in 47 plate appearances, but it's such a small sample on the season.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, but also you're asking over under on a guy who, the over is plus, what's the over on total bases? Plus 100. Yeah, plus 100. Okay. So sorry, plus 100. Even money. Yeah, -118. I'd lean under on this one. Tough matchup. Unless you have better odds out there. All right. Can we wrap this one up?
Yep.
Chicago Cubs, LA Angels. Who do we got coming up, Jordan, live before lock? Mr. Greg Ehrenberg, Mr. Neil Orfield. All right. Devin, when Strider shaves his mustache, that's when I stop playing him. That's where all his power comes from. Maybe. It is weird to see someone so effortlessly get swings and misses like he does. It's very, very strange to watch him pitch in a way.
Yeah, have you seen any of his interviews with like Pitching Ninja?
No. They good?
He's an interesting dude. Just
All
very
right, what do you mean?
Just very like I mean, kind of like you have to be to get to the level he's at.
He's
but
stoic.
Sort of, I guess, but like very just like I guess like unimpressed with himself. Like
Gotcha.
Like he had, some start where he struck out a million guys and Pitching Ninja's talking to him. Or maybe it was a start where he flirted with like a perfect game. I don't remember what it was, but Pitching Ninja like asked him about it, and he was like, "Nah, it's not a perfect game unless I strike out 27 guys on 81 pitches. Other than that, there's room for improvement."
Wow.
And that was basically all he had to say about it.
Steve McGee said cerebral. I was going to say cerebral too, but I don't think that's what you're saying. You're talking about just a guy that like knows he's good, but is also never good enough for himself.
Yeah, like very much strikes me as just like a perfectionist. Like,
yeah,
he wakes up probably just like mad about the one pitch that he missed his spot on the game before.
Oh man, let's hope the PM 2.5 doesn't get towards him. He's going to be furious. All right. Hey, let's get to this last game and hit that thumbs up. Also, if you're not rocking the stochastic avatar, what are you doing, man? We had some big ones. One guy, not that it'll matter anymore, but he had tweeted at us, Jordan, I don't have it up, but he's like, don't worry, I like paying for the tools, which awesome. But he's like, I don't know how to change my avatar, which is amazing, Adam, because it was a screenshot of him winning $100,000 yesterday. Oh, it's good stuff. But yeah, stochastic.com/avatar. Tweet your wins to us. It's stochastic HOF, and finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, baby. Get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, and you get inducted into the Hall of Fame, which is a crowning achievement of your life. Unlike Spencer Strider, you will be fulfilled. All right, Adam, I wanted to talk to you while we got some people watching. We've had so many questions about it. We've had, sparked a lot of conversation around DFS Twitter and everything. The MLB the Sims tool, right, that we just released on Monday. We've talked about it a lot. Everybody's using it. What is the best way to somebody that might be not new to DFS, but new to like an elevated process that helps them? What is the best way that you would describe it and why it's valuable?
I think it's just, it basically is giving you access to a tool that is at least comparable, similar to what a lot of top players have been using for a long time.
The pros.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just, it's another tool. It's a way that it's more powerful than just using projections. It's more powerful than anything that's going to rely on like a static median projection, because that's not going to tell you the full story. So it's just another way to really get an idea of how you should be balancing ownership and projection, for example. Like, that's something that comes up a lot in chat, in questions. What is too high of an ownership number? How, too high of an ownership sum, whatever it may be. It's basically going to answer those questions for you, because as long as you are simulating a group of lineups that are reflective of what the field is going to look like, what's coming out at the top is going to be your best bets at winning that tournament. So it's basically just answering those questions for you. It's removing a lot of the uncertainty around, am I balancing this correctly? Is this lineup too chalky? Is this lineup not, projecting high enough? It gets rid of a lot of that. So it's just another tool that you can use. The way I know I described it on a show with Neil the other day was, I've talked for a long time, for years, about that I have stuff in Excel that I take my lineups out of Fantasy Cruncher, I put them in Excel, and sort of try and balance and find the best lineups that I can play from the lineups that I made. This is an even stronger way of doing that, because even with ranking lineups and stuff that we've talked about in the past, you're still using static, median projections, which only tell you part of the story. So it's just, it's a powerful way to essentially balance your lineups correctly and play plus EV lineups.
With the pre and post game sims too. So you can
Right.
evaluate before and after, which is obviously necessary for a process like this. If you're interested in checking it out, go for it. It's awesome. And, like you said, pros are using some iteration of this already. We've just now, made it public. Not everyone needs it in the sense that like you have to pay that much a month for it, but in the event that you're playing decent stakes right now and you're looking, because like people aren't using this in micro stakes, Adam. There's no point.
Right.
That's why we have the lineup generator for $4.50, which is a great tool. It's already running the sims. You're just not seeing behind the scenes.
Right. Exactly. It's, and then to your point too, like it's not, you shouldn't feel discouraged if like you're not using them or whatever. Especially like if you're playing low stakes, because your opponents aren't either. And it's not necessarily cost effective. But if you are playing mid stakes, if you are, looking to improve, then it's a useful tool. It's something that I've certainly been using more. It's something that I've already seen, improved results for me. So yeah, it is a strong tool. But like you were saying, it's, lineup generator is giving you, it's basically cutting out a lot of the detail and giving you still quality lineups, stuff that would end up near the top in Sims. So it's really, about finding a balance for what you're looking to do, what tournaments you're playing in. But all of this stuff is just stuff that's going to help you get better.
Check it out. Link in the description and chat for the lineup generator too, whichever ones you want to get in on. And if you ever have any questions, a lot of our DMs on Twitter are open, so you can hit us up. Not Adam. All right.
No, they're open. I just want to answer.
Oh, they are. I got you. Okay. Let's wrap this up. Chicago and LA. I didn't mind running a little late on this because we already talked at length about Reed Detmers early in the show. We could just recap that real quick and then hit on Drew Smiley here and some bats before we get out of here.
Yeah, the Detmer spot is just interesting. Hitter-friendly park, tough matchup with the Cubs, 113 WRC plus against left-handed pitching since the start of last year for the Cubs active roster, but also a 24% K percentage for Chicago. So there are going to be strikeouts there. And you just shouldn't have a pitcher priced at $6,500 when he's striking out 26.5% of hitters. So the upside is very obviously there for Detmers. The ownership is probably a little bit higher, a bit higher than it should be at 49%. This can still go poorly. Don't get me wrong. This is a dangerous matchup. The Cubs have a 4.3 implied run total. It's not like Vegas expects them to do nothing or anything like that. It's just a spot where Detmers, if you're going to price Barrios at 8,800 against Houston and Verlander at 8,600 against Atlanta, Detmers should be like $8,000 and he's 6,500. So he's the most glaring mispriced pitcher on the slate on DraftKings, and that's why you're getting so much ownership. And he's a good play. You can use him in so many different ways. You can pair him with Strider and still get to good bats. You can pair him with a mid-range guy and get to whatever bats you want. He's just going to fit in a lot of lineup builds. But the other side of that is in non-Detmers lineups, I do like the idea of getting to the Cubs because he is so cheap where if he doesn't get hit hard, he's probably going to succeed at this price tag. He gets strikeouts. He's really cheap. It's not that tough to pay off a $6,500 salary. But going to the Cubs, it's not a great matchup, but none of the matchups for any team on this slate are great. You don't have bad pitching on this slate. And the Cubs are second in top stack percentage at 15%, only pulling 11% ownership because people are going to go to Detmers so much. So I do I like Detmers. I also really like the Cubs. This kind of strikes me as a spot. I talked about it the other day when I am blanking on the guy. Abbott started for the Reds at 4K and he was facing Milwaukee, a team that strikes out a lot, but also has, some power in their lineup. And I said that in the majority of my lineups, I probably want one of the two. And I think I ended up getting, like 50 to 60% of my lineups that night either were Milwaukee stacks or had Abbott. That's kind of how I view this. It's sort of similar to the Cleveland versus Dermody side or matchup where everybody is cheap and somebody kind of has to end up doing well. Except for here, I think there's more upside because you actually have a quality offense in the Cubs, unlike Cleveland, and you have a quality strikeout pitcher in Detmers, unlike Dermody. So this is another spot like that, but I think even more extreme.
No, it's a great point. Yeah, we talked a lot extensively about Abbott against Milwaukee. Milwaukee just was terrible, but it was good for all the Abbott lineups and could have gone either way. The only crazy thing about Reed here, Detmers, and we can get out of here and turn it over to Neil and Greg. Only a 135 expect X ISO against righties this season, which is really crazy. That's not a lot of power.
Yeah, it's he also has a strikeout percentage against righties 7 points higher than against lefties. So
crazy.
You're going to get a right-handed heavy Cubs lineup. We don't have the lineup yet, but the projected lineup is entirely right-handed / switch hitters. But that's not necessarily a benefit here. Like you still expect him to be worse against opposite-handed hitters, and he has been. He's allowed a sub 100 expected ISO to lefties, but the strikeout numbers are there. He can strike righties out. He throws his slider to right-handed hitters 38% of the time, has a 24.5% swinging strike percentage, which tells you he's probably doing a really good job of burying that pitch back foot. So it looks like it's a, low, middle, lower inner third fastball, and then it's just basically hitting you in the foot. Really, really tough pitch to hit, and that's how you have to use it if you're throwing sliders to opposite-handed hitters, and clearly he's had success with it. But you do just still get a lot of power upside in a good hitter's park for the Cubs.
Anything else before we close this one out?
Angels have the second highest implied run total on the slate. Smiley's another pitcher. He's just sort of there. He's not bad at limiting power. He's not bad at getting strikeouts, 21% K percentage, 3.8 FIP, 4.5 XFIP. But I do like the upside that the Angels give you. They don't have Hunter Renfroe, which sucks, but you do still have Ward, Ohtani, Trout, Drury 1 through 4. Urshela's cheap, batting 5th. Joe Adell is back to strike out 5 times, hitting 6th. But joking aside, he does have power. He is a former first-round pick. So there is plenty of upside here for the Angels, and they are reasonably priced. The only guys in their lineup on DraftKings that are north of $4,100 are Ohtani and Trout, and that is obviously fully deserved.
Hey, you can follow Adam at Ship My Money DFS. You never know what he's going to say. Sometimes even hit me up before he says, like, hey, keep an eye out. Follow me at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. Shout out to Jordan for producing this one. And thanks to you guys for hanging out as always. Don't go anywhere, though. Greg and Neil coming up, taking you all the way up to first pitch. We'll be back tomorrow with more baseball and game 4 of the NBA Finals. So we got a lot on the schedule for Friday to wrap up the week. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace. Yo, it's that time of week again. Time to induct some of you fine people into the Stochastic Hall of Fame and give away some free months of Stochastic Plus Platinum, $120 value. All you got to do to get involved, get up on the board. Let us do the bragging for you and get that free sub. Download the Stochastic profile picture at stochastic.com/avatar and tweet your wins at StochasticHOF. You finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, boom, you're up here. And you got a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, and we're in business. Let's get into it. We got a lot of big winners for this week, starting it off with Brandon Wagner. Stochastic, I finally shipped one, nearly 3 years to close a tourney out solo. Thanks for all the help over the years. Love it. $70,000 battery, 10K to the Crypto Cowboy. Congrats, Brandon. Happy to see it happen to the good guys. And Brett, Stochastic HOF, end again. Yeah, he's been on a heater in the 100K 4-point play. 7,500 NBA showdown for Brett. That's the second or third time he's been up here in the past couple of weeks. And how about, is it Snays 10? Snays 10 DFS? Well, I thought I was joining the esteemed Hall of Fame. However, a change of Barnes reaching by error to a hit in the 9th, no less, knocked me to 4th. Still a great day. And thanks to all the Stochastic team, tools, YouTube shows, my best GPP finish ever. Yeah, man, not a bad consolation for not getting in 4th place in the relay throw, $5,000. Congrats, dude. Phillips, still not a bad ROI. Chop with 20 others, but I'll take it. Thanks to the crew. Keep up the good work. Yeah, that's a chop, but 115 in the $2,400 is a big win any day of the week. Dave DFS, nice tools with the salute. 6 picks in prize picks. 6-pick flex play. $2,500 on a $100 flex picks play. Huge hit there. And Michael Pavlik, I know I'm late, but does this get me into the Hall of Fame? 30K mini max. Yeah, assuming you didn't chop that a bunch of different ways, my guess is you definitely didn't, given by the prize pool. $3,000 for Nightmare 1993 certainly gets you into the Hall of Fame, get you that 3-month subscription as well. And Dave Oliver, thank you guys for great slate breakdowns and the best tools in the business. 20K Tuesday MLB pinch hit, $500 for Elway's Army. And Professional finished third out of 28,000. Thanks to Adam and Josh. Does this get me into the Hall of Fame? Yes, sir, it does. We checked that, Josh and I, actually, on the strategy show. You only chopped it, I think, one way. Third place, TMMC, $87. Get you the free sub. It's a wonderful thing. Him downstairs. And they be saying Laffy and Josh don't be talking NBA. I can't tell. It's a chop, but money is money. First place out of 5,900. Yeah, love to see that for DraftKings. $353 there on $13 of entries. And Mood 77 finally made it into the Hall of Fame. Been watching Deeper Dives for a while and learning baseball DFS. Thanks to Josh and Adam for the advice. Took down first and fourth in the FanDuel Beanball and won over $1,000 on a $2 entry. I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, guys. You know it. You want to get into the Hall of Fame. As long as you have the avatar, doesn't matter if you're entering 5-cent contests or $25 contests. As long as you're top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more rocking the avatar, you're getting in just like anybody else would. And Jonathan, I've never sweated all the way to the last batter in my lineup for first place like this before, but man, it sure was fun. I really feel like all you at Stochastic are underrated in my book. Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for everything. Second out of 43,000 for Jonathan. Nice, brother. And then Jesus Figueroa, thanks for the projections and info. Hit a little bankroll builder, $250 in the MLB pinch hit. And we close it out with Adam Prindle. Big shout out to Laffy, Josh, and Underdog for the win. They had the most insane payout booster the other day, which was if you placed $5 and had Nikola Jokic over under 27.5 points. If you hit all 5, you turn $5 into 500. And we had a ton of people just raining money down on him the other day. Adam Prindle's one of them, goes 5 for 5 on Underdog. Love to see it. Remember, guys, use the avatar. Tweet your wins to Stochastic HOF and get a free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Shout out and congrats to all of the winners. We'll see you back here for another edition of the Stochastic Hall of Fame next week.
What is happening, everybody? It is time for the next hour. Well, actually, a little bit less than that. It's really going to be like the next 50 minutes. Neil Orfield and I are about to break down the upcoming baseball slates. As you come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We are sponsored by Prize Picks today. We're going to be talking more about them as we go through the show. But most importantly, Neil, weird slate here today, only 4 games. I actually like it quite a bit, though. There's a lot of leverage spots that I'm looking at that I like quite a bit. And since only 4 games, I was able to run all my lineups through our Sims tool, which I'm always excited about because I really do like using it. But one thing that, is a little difficult if I'm hosting like a 13-game slate and only like half the lineups are out, it's very difficult to be able to prepare for that in advance. For today, I was able to. I've got everything mapped out here. I've got everything built out. If the Cubs fuck me and they put out a weird starting lineup today, I'm taking down the entire city of Chicago. I'm sure our friend Windy City.
3 Windy 1 City 2, maybe
3
something
Windy
like that.
1 City 2, because that's the Chicago area code 312. They better not fuck with me and put out a weird starting lineup. But other than that, I'm really excited to talk about today's slate. Once again, if you guys haven't done it, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's Thursday, which means it's baseball night for Neil. Is your softball team going to win tonight?
I think my softball team is going to win tonight. We are not facing the one dominant team in our league. There's also a second team that I think is like pretty good. I think most teams we would be favored against. However, we are missing 2 or 3 of our best players. So it's a little bit, not a sure thing by any stretch, but I think we're the favorite here.
Is this is this like the equivalent of the Twins having their half their lineup on the
Kind
injury
of.
report?
Like we have one player who's just way better than all the rest of us. He's our shortstop, which is a very important position. He's our leadoff hitter. He's out today. So it's a pretty important bat that's out of the lineup. And I think that he's more important to our softball team than like any Major League Baseball player is to their team. Like you can make a bigger impact, I think, on a softball team than a Major League Baseball team.
And why are these people out? Are they injured? Do they just have better?
No idea why. He might just have. Sometimes he goes camping. We have people who do a lot of stuff randomly. I know. If I were the coach, I would tell him off, but our coach allows it.
So there should be a softball injury report, kind of like there is in the NBA, and people should have to write it down so they feel shame. Because if you have to report to everybody in the league, like, hey, Ted is out because he went camping today. Johnny's out because he's got a UTI. Like, I want all of that recorded somewhere, and they have to put it down. And then number one, you get into people's personal shit, which I always think is a good positive.
That's always fun.
Yes, exactly. But I want to know what kind of things people are doing that makes them blow off your very important softball game. Because I get the idea that you absolutely never blow off a softball game.
I think I broke my ankle in a softball game. I ran from first to second and I overran the base, and in trying to get back, I did something to my ankle that like literally for 2 years afterwards, it was sore. Like for a month, I limped. I didn't miss a play. I missed. So the only plays I missed was I batted, and then I would have other people run for me if I got to first base. That was the only thing I missed. The only time that I have missed games is when I had my appendix out, and it was like, okay, I can't play with stomach that's stitched up. So that's the only time I missed games. Yeah, I'm pretty reliable there.
I knew that. Dedication. That is what you come to expect from Neil Orfield. Dedication. He's not quite as dedicated to wearing his flannels during the summer, but anything else, you put Neil down on the schedule.
Greg. Hang on a second. I bought and wore this flannel earlier this week, and you didn't say anything.
Yeah, I did. There were days you wore flannels that I pointed it out. But I'm more astute when you don't wear it, for sure.
That is true. You're better at recognizing when I'm not wearing my flannel. Something's off here.
What do you wear? What are you going to be wearing to softball tonight?
I'm going to be wearing a V-neck, shorts.
All right. Yeah. All right. Not what you're wearing right now?
Not what I'm wearing. Yeah, I can't wear my pajamas to softball.
All right. Well,
this is not actually pajamas, by the way. Okay, go ahead.
I was going to say, we got a super chat from our guy, Ace of Spade. So we can start the baseball conversation here. And Ace of Spade wants to know DK tiers. So if I'm not mistaken, I think I saw Josh put up his DK tiers tweet earlier in the day. So if you want to pull that up, we could go back and forth, answer Ace of Spade. This is going to come, by the way, we start every baseball show now with an Ace of Spade segment, pretty much. We come in, we get the DK tiers question. You pull up Josh's. I like it. I should start adding this to the run sheet I sent to Jordan. I'm going to start putting this in. So when I go through the stuff like, hey, we're going to talk about pitchers. We're going to run through lineups in the lineup generator. We're going to talk about prize picks. If you sign up at prize picks, you get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit when you use the link below. Then you also going to get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. So I put all these things in the run sheet. I think going forward, I'm going to start putting Ace of Spade at the top of the run sheet because we anticipate that super chat. And then we start answering the questions.
I like it. Good plan.
Do you have Josh's projections?
I do.
By the way?
I got it up. Yep.
All right. So let's start breaking this down then. So we got 6 tiers to talk about today. And I'm curious where Josh went in tier 1 because there's a lot of studs in that one. Acuna, Ohtani, Trout, Yordan Alvarez. And I think it's pretty wide open. Where did Josh go to kick off tier 1?
Ronald Acuna.
Same. I ended up on Ronald Acuna as well. And kind of interesting because he has a matchup that, at least on paper, should be somewhat difficult against Justin Verlander, but Verlander has regressed a little bit this year, and I do like getting to Acuna here. So it is going to be Acuna for me in tier 1. And then the reason I also wanted to point that out is because when I get to tier 2, my most common player that popped up was Matt Olson, who's also from the Braves. So I don't know that in general I would love to be stacking against Justin Verlander, but at least for today in tiers, it does look like it's how I'm kicking off both tier 1 and tier 2. Where was Josh leading in tier 2?
Same thing. Matt Olson going back to the Braves there.
All right. So we got some Brave stacks here. Going with Matt Olson, going with Ronald Acuna in the first couple of tiers. Now tier 3, this is where I start to get into some of these Chicago Cubs. It's a team that I'm going to be stacking a lot in classic contests today. And also where I think there's an opportunity in tiers to get to some Cubs. So tier 3, I have Dansby Swanson, who, by the way, a little bit of correlation as Neil remembers the other day, he accidentally slipped up and called Dansby Swanson, formerly of the Braves, now of the Cubs. Is there any added correlation because he's on the Cubs but used to be on the Braves? Probably not, but I had Swanson in tier 3.
I was going to say, yeah, I'm going to play Dansby Swanson in my Brave stack once again with Acuna and Matt Olson. No, Josh actually likes Rafael Devers number 1.
Okay. So Josh going with Devers there. Me, I went with Dansby Swanson, tier 4, going right back to the Braves. This with Austin Riley for myself.
Yeah, so no correlation here going to Jose Ramirez for Josh.
Yeah, Ramirez popped up second for me, and definitely tiers to the tiers here. Where I look at tier 4, my 2 favorite options are Austin Riley, Jose Ramirez, and kind of everybody else. But I lean with Austin Riley just because of how he does correlate with the other Braves who liked in tier 1 and tier 2. And that's more important than anything else in baseball. So going with Austin Riley there. And tier 5 now, 2 players that stood out for me. One is Seiya Suzuki, and the other being Ozzy Albies. Both of them correlate well with the other players I like, but I'm going to go with Suzuki here, who I did get to in a little bit more of my lineup. So sticking with the Braves and the Cubs stacks, I went Suzuki there in tier 5. What did Josh have?
Josh has a tie at the top with Seiya Suzuki and Jeremy Pena.
Okay. And then where was Albies in the mix?
Albies is 4th there, but I mean, they're all within those 4. So it's Suzuki, Pena, Murphy, and Albies are all within 3% of each other, and then Christopher Morel is a little bit of a dip down.
And then tier 6, I'm in between a couple of guys here, Travis d'Arnaud and Ian Happ. By the way, also both of them correlate with the other combinations we made. So I'm going Braves, Cubs stacks pretty heavy throughout tiers in the lineups I built. d'Arnaud, Ian Happ, I think both of them are really, really close options. And then just whether you're playing more Braves or Cubs in the first 5 tiers, I think that's how you decide who you go to between Travis d'Arnaud and Ian Happ. But did Josh have it any different?
Travis d'Arnaud did not make Josh's graphic, so I don't know if that was an error or if he was just below like the cutoff line. I don't know what it was, but he's not on the graphic. He has Stephen Kwan number 1, so a little bit of correlation there with the Jose Ramirez pick if you want to go to some Guardians.
Sure. So my guess is that Josh did not have d'Arnaud in the projected lineup when he did it this morning.
That might be correct.
It's probably what the issue was there. So. Yeah. Who knows? Maybe he would feel differently about d'Arnaud had he been in the projected lineup earlier in the day. But anyway, thank you very much for the super chat, Ace of Spade. We appreciate the support and all the super chats. And thank you. We made tiers largely because of you. A big portion of the show here that the audience is always asking us about. So love to see it and always happy to answer those questions. If anybody has other questions for us in our Discord channel, just add us. We'll answer those as the show goes along. How about we talk about some pitchers here, Neil? Ready to talk about the pitchers on today's slate?
I am. Let's do it.
So here's where I think we have to start. Spencer Strider. Spencer Strider is by far the most popular pitcher on today's slate. We've got him projected for, what's the most recent run? 65% ownership over on DraftKings. We'll talk about DraftKings and FanDuel. Well, it's going to kind of be tough actually to talk about FanDuel because the FanDuel slate locked an hour and a half ago.
So we probably don't need to. You think we need to?
We should. I mean, there's probably going to be some people that are in here that still want to know about some of the players. So just because the slate locked an hour and a half ago and it is different games, we won't talk quite as much about FanDuel. But if any of his FanDuel specific questions, we'll definitely hit on those and still touch on some of that stuff as it comes. But like Zach Wheeler is a really important piece to the FanDuel slate. He's the most popular projected pitcher at FanDuel, and his game is already locked. So that is going to make it a little bit hard to talk about it from that angle. But at least as far as Spencer Strider goes, he's the most popular projected pitcher on the slate by a long shot. 65% ownership going to Spencer Strider. In addition to that, he's the most popular pitcher. I mean, not the most popular, also the most expensive pitcher by a mile. So you got 12K, 65% owned. In addition, a tough matchup against the Mets. All those factors being considered, what are you going to be doing with Spencer Strider in large field tournaments?
Probably going to be playing more than the field of Spencer Strider. Like at the end of the, I mean, it's a tough matchup. Obviously the price tag is up there. I ran lineup generator earlier and I was getting to 100% Spencer Strider. I don't know that I want to play 100%. If I go back and just make my lineups the old fashioned way in Fantasy Cruncher, I probably won't get to 100%. I'll probably set a cap somewhere. If I do use lineup generator, like it was hard to find lineups that don't have Spencer Strider. That's how well he projects for us, how often he is in some of those top lineups. So, I'm not taking any, I'm not trying to like fade Spencer Strider. My guess is I end up close to maybe even above the field there. How about you?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was able to run through my entire process in in the lineup simulation tool, which by the way, also, if you guys haven't checked it out yet, A couple of things. Number one, I've been doing videos on how I use it. Not necessarily how I use it, but just my results on Twitter. I post these short videos where I do an initial run in the morning and just kind of show what ends up popping up as being the stacks I get to the most, the pitchers I get to, just like 2-3 minutes short piece of content. I have been enjoying doing it, but since there was a 4-game slate, I got to go through everything how I would normally do it in the lineup simulation tool. And I got to a good amount of Spencer Strider. He's one of my most rostered pitchers right now, but I'm underweight to the field to him. And the biggest issue is on a slate where there are only 4 games and we don't have that many pitching options. One of the easiest ways to differentiate is just getting underweight to the field on Spencer Strider. Like I get to him in nearly 40% of my lineups on almost any slate. That's a ton of any one pitcher, but that's not also all that close to the field on where everybody's at here with Strider at 65% owned. So I'm kind of differentiating a little bit, getting not necessarily away from Strider, but just underweight to the field when there are some other options that I like quite a bit. And once you get past Reed Detmers and Spencer Strider, everybody else is kind of contrarian at pitcher. Strider, 65% owned. Detmers, 51% owned. When you have 2 pitchers making up 120% of the ownership of the field, everything else comes out looking like a pretty contrarian option. And that's kind of where my lineups ended up getting when I ran them through the lineup simulation, which is not that I hate Strider at all. Just there's a lot of opportunity cost to playing him when you consider the ownership, the price tag, and just in the interest of trying to be different on this slate. I got away from Strider a little bit. Cash games, absolutely go ahead and play Strider, but I'm going to be underweight to the field to him on tournaments. Are there any high-end pitching options that you like? Actually, I shouldn't even say high-end pitching options because you got Framber Valdez at 10,400 and kind of nobody else there. But who is the low-owned pitcher, meaning outside of Strider and Reed Detmers? Who is the pitcher you like the most who isn't one of those 2?
Very good question. Probably have to be Verlander in Atlanta. It is, obviously a tough spot in Atlanta. We've got Verlander coming in at just 15% ownership, though, 20% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 15% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. If I can play Justin Verlander, 8,600, 15% with only 50% of the field there in a 4-game slate, I'm happy to go to some Verlander. Yeah, I mean, you say just outside of Strider and Detmers, those are the only restrictions?
Yeah, I mean, those are the only 2 popular pitchers.
Okay.
We got one of them 65% on, one of them is 51%. The next most popular pitcher is Aaron Savali at 17.1%.
Yeah, I mean, it might be Framber Valdez might actually be the answer in that case. He actually looks even better than I like Verlander. He's a little bit cheaper. Framber Valdez, though, only getting 17% projected ownership, 29% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. Obviously a really tough matchup in Toronto for Framber Valdez, but probably be my guess is that I'd get to more of Valdez than just Justin Verlander. It's going to come down to one of those 2, I think. Outside of those 2, I mean, I guess Matt Dermody, also somebody I was getting to some in lineup generator, coming in at just 9% ownership with a 50% chance of being a top 2 value. I don't know if we need the value on this slate. Kind of have to see how it plays out, but I have some interest there. And he also has a 13% chance of just being a top 2 pitcher overall, and he's only 4,000. So I'd say those are the pitchers that I'm the most interested in. How about you?
So, by the way, we just got the Cubs lineup out and nothing too crazy.
Oh,
Miguel Amaya is in the lineup instead of Yan Gomes. Oh, no, Yan Gomes is in the lineup too. So this is going to be goofy. We have 2 catcher eligible players with no other position eligibility for the Cubs today. You have Yamaya at 2,400 and then Yan Gomes at 3,000. So I'm going to have to make some adjustments for that after this. But yeah, interesting. Was not expecting that to be the lineup. Then who isn't in? All right. Who was somebody that was expected to be in for the Cubs that is not? All right, let's compare. So Cubs lineup for today, by the way, is Nico Horner, Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, Yan Gomes, Miguel Amaya, Trey Mancini, Patrick Wisdom, and Mike Tauchman. So if anybody was waiting for the Cubs lineup, as I was, there we go. We got that starting 9 for them. Sorry, that just crossed the line. What was the question you had asked me, Neil?
I think I just I asked you who your favorite low-owned pitchers are outside of those top 2.
Yeah, so for me, it's pretty close. So it's also going to depend on the site. So on FanDuel, I liked getting to Reed Detmers. I know he is an outside of those pitchers, but one pitcher that really stood out to me also on FanDuel was Justin Verlander, just because the win bonus is so important on FanDuel, and you have so much ownership going to Spencer Strider that if the Mets win the game, which I mean, they're only plus 160 on the money line. It's not like they have like a 5% chance to win the game or anything like that. You have Justin Verlander at 1% owned, whereas Strider is 35% owned on FanDuel. So that's just a really easy way to get leverage, in my opinion, is playing Verlander over on FanDuel. For DraftKings purposes, it's Drew Smyly for me. He's really cheap. Of the pitchers that I actually like today, he's the one that's the cheapest that I think presents the most upside outside of Reed Detmers. You know, we've got this guy starting for the Red Sox who's the flat min, Matt Dermody, but we'll talk about what to do with him in a second because it kind of warrants its own discussion. But he's a 32-year-old rookie who's been toiling in the minor leagues and was formerly a relief pitcher. That's almost never a guy who's actually going to be expected to perform well at the big league level, but he's only $4K on DraftKings, so it does open up, you know, some potential salary saving opportunities. But for me, it's going to be Drew Smyly. He's only $7,000. The Angels are an offense that I've used being a little bit over-owned today, and the Cubs are my favorite stack on the entire slate. So you get a little bit of added correlation with the win bonus. And of the pitchers who are projected for less than 10% ownership today, you've got Drew Smyly and you've got Matt Dermody. I have to prefer Drew Smyly to Matt Dermody. Also, I don't really know that the 4K price point gives me that much necessary salary savings on a 4-game slate. So Drew Smyly is one of my most rostered pitchers, and I really do like him for the cheap price point and a guy who actually has strikeout upside. He's capable of generating swing and misses. So that is where I'm going, is Drew Smyly to be contrarian.
I'm trying to look into, I'm looking into Matt Dermody a little more because our tool, like the top pitchers tool, really likes him. So I'm just trying to see, you know, what the strikeout rate was and stuff in the minor leagues, trying to find that info, unless you've already checked it out. So he's so far this year, no, MLB 27 innings pitched, 22 strikeouts for Dermody. His minor league in 2023, 44 innings pitched, 47 strikeouts. So it seems to be a pretty good strikeout pitcher. I have interest there just, I mean, kind of based on the tools. Like he is fully stretched out. We don't have to worry about that at all. He's been starting in the minor leagues. So yeah, I haven't really built too many lineups yet, other than when I did my lineup generator exercise for the VOD. I was getting to some Dermody when I did the lineup generator VOD, which tells me that it is possible to like use him to pay up for some better bats. So I have some interest there, but yeah, Drew Smyly, that's a good call out as well. He looks good in the top pitchers tool as well.
Yeah, and by the way, it was Christopher Morel, who is not in the Cubs starting lineup. I was looking through and trying to figure like, oh, who is in the projected starting lineup that didn't end up making it? It was Morel. So that is useful. Just removed him from everything. And then I'll be able to rerun my lineups here in a second once we get an ownership update on the latest Cubs lineup. So Drew Smyly, that is going to be the contrarian guy that I get to. But let's talk about Reed Detmers as well, because he's projected for 51% ownership. He is the value option that the field is all getting to over on DraftKings. Also, one of the reasons why we talk about the Cubs, I like the Cubs as a leverage play because you're going to be able to stack them against a massively, massively popular Reed Detmers. Cash games, I think it's really simple. You're playing Spencer Strider, you're playing Reed Detmers. That's your cash combination. Lock it in. Nothing too much else to think about. But for tournaments, Neil, what are you going to be doing with Reed Detmers, who is 51% owned, super cheap, a talented pitcher? The Cubs offense has been better than expected this year, but it's really the ownership that gets me at 51%.
I don't love the ownership. So I will say this. I did a lineup generator a couple hours ago, did balance builds, and I got to 100% of both Spencer Strider and Reed Detmers in those balance builds. So I was like, all right, I'm going to have to do something different. Then I went to some contrarian lineups and found some other pitchers. So that was a way to get rid of Reed Detmers. If you don't want 100% in your lineup generator lineups, just make sure you go to some contrarian builds. I think that I'd like to be underweight to the field here. I get it. He's 6,500. He doesn't look great in the top pitchers tool, as with 51% projected ownership, 29% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, 44% chance of being a top 2 value. It's good, but like I think that there are some other pitchers like that could actually put up enough of an upside to more than make up for the price differential. So he's 6,500, makes sense. He's going to get into a lot of better lineups, but it wouldn't be that shocking to see Framber Valdez put up a game that you actually need, or Justin Verlander, or just see one of these other Drew Smyly or Matt Dermody could very easily outscore Reed Detmers. So I do think that if I have the time to do it, I would like to be underweight to the field on Reed Detmers in favor of taking more shots than some of these other pitchers.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys like Detmers and Strider, I'm getting to a good amount of them. but a good amount of them still ends up with me being underweight to the field on them. And then I'm overweight to Met stacks. I'm overweight to Cub stacks. It's just kind of an easy way to differentiate lineups, generate some leverage today. So I like Strider and Detmers individually, play them in cash games. Tournaments, though, it's not that hard to get overweight to some of these other guys. Like I think Framber Valdez on a small slate, 17% ownership is really low. Justin Verlander, 15% ownership, also really low for him. Drew Smyly, 9%. I think this is a pretty good GPP slate as far as pitchers go. But let's talk about Matt Dermody then. He is so cheap today. He is 4K. He's not picking up any ownership. Is he somebody that you want to get to just to give yourself more salary flexibility? Is he too much of an unknown to the point where you don't really want to roster him? The matchup against the Cleveland Guardians not really ideal. This is a team that, at least on paper, shouldn't be striking out a ton this year. Dermody, who knows what the hell you're getting out of him, but what are you going to be doing with him? Flat 4K price tag, so clearly he gives you salary savings. Is it needed, though?
I don't know that it's necessarily needed. I do think, like, even without needing the salary savings, he's a good enough pitcher based on just, I mean, we don't have a ton of data here. I'm looking at the data that I can find for Matt Dermody, which is, again, 44 innings pitched in the minor league so far this year, 47 strikeouts. So more than one strikeout per inning. You'll take that all day. For his MLB career, 27 innings pitched, 22 strikeouts. Not quite so great there, but, you know, still not a bad strikeout rate. And then for his minor league career, 465 innings pitched, 410 strikeouts, which that seems like I don't have the actual strikeout rate here. I just have the raw numbers, but that's going to be a pretty good strikeout rate. So yeah, I have some interest here. And just looking at the top pitchers tool, we actually have him with a 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. That's independent of the price tag. So he's 4,000, but even not factoring that in, 13% chance of being a top 2 pitcher, not bad for a guy who's going to be 9% owned. Now, of course, he is the lowest on the board of all these pitchers. He is the lowest in terms of top 2 pitcher odds. So not like great from that perspective, but 50% chance of being a top 2 value pitcher. I think there are constructions that you can get to by playing Matt Dermody that you can't get to with other pitchers. So I do have interest there. I don't know. I have enough interest that I'm definitely going to be above weight to the field on the 9% ownership that the field has. I'm not going to have like 50% Matt Dermody. Like, I don't think that you really need the savings to that extent, but I'll be over 10% for sure.
I'm not that much different than the field. I have him in 9%. Well, actually, almost the exact same. I just realized I have him in 9% of my lineup. So, like, not a priority. If he makes his way into some lineups and this is a way to differentiate them, I don't have an issue with it, but it's really not necessary. It's a small slate. There aren't that many offenses to pay up for. It's okay to get to them, but not really any kind of, necessity in any kind of way. Let's answer some of the questions that we have in Discord, and then we'll look at what Lineup Generator is giving us, and then we'll also talk about Prize Picks, our sponsor.
Can I just address one thing first, Greg? Just because I see two different people made similar comments. One of them, 400 just said, and it was kind of supporting like my like of the pitcher. He says, if the dude gets 8 points, he makes value, referring to Matt Dermody. That's not really a thing in MLB so much as NBA. Like NBA, you can like kind of, it's still like sort of, do you really want to factor in like the 6x value or whatever? I wouldn't really factor that in as much for MLB. Just projections are so all over projections are not as reliable in MLB as they are in NBA, or it's not as projectable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. MLB is not as projectable. So I don't think you can really think of MLB in terms of like getting there from a point per dollar perspective as much as NBA. So I don't know. I just want to say that 8 points isn't going to be enough. Like it wouldn't be enough for a 4K pitcher because you do need those raw points as well. So I just wanted to address that real quick, that I don't think that's the right way to look at it in MLB in particular.
Yeah. I don't really read too much into the pitcher projections. And certainly, by the way, like if you tell me right now that Dermody's going to score 8 fantasy points, I want him in none of my lineups.
Yeah, I'd be full fading him.
Yeah. If you tell me guaranteed 100% Dermody's putting up 8 fantasy points, cool. I'm playing 0%. I'm taking out of my player pool. And
if you tell me that he's going to get 15 fantasy points, I wouldn't like lock him in at 15. Like that'd be a pretty good outing for a 4K pitcher. It's not enough that I'd be locking him. If you told me he's going to get like 22, then I'd probably lock him in. But from just having a good game from a point per dollar perspective for a pitcher is not going to be enough.
Yeah, especially because let's say he scores 8 fantasy points, but Drew Smyly scores 18 at 7,000. Well, you'd much rather play Drew Smyly. Well, actually, I'll frame it this way. If you get 10 fantasy points out of Matt Dermody, that's better quote unquote points per dollar than 15 out of Drew Smiley. The 15 out of Drew Smiley, the 5 fantasy points probably matters. It's not that hard to find salary savings in baseball in some of these slates too, where, you know, there'll be a lot of cheap hitters that might go out and hit a home run or get an extra base hit that might be more than what a more expensive hitter gets. So one thing that's going to happen in NBA, it's very rare that you are going to see the value play of the night outscore, say, like a LeBron James or a Karl-Anthony Towns or Anthony Edwards. We'll throw some Minnesota players in there, Neil. In baseball, all the time you're going to see a cheap hitter outscore like a Mike Trout or a Shohei Ohtani. One of those guys hits a home run. Cool. They're probably putting up more fantasy points than an Ohtani type. So that's why also the points per dollar, the cheap value at pitcher might not always necessarily matter quite as much in baseball. Well, let's answer some of these questions that we have in Discord. First from Rosso Music wants to know, would you guys rather go to Urshela or Rengifo? Well, let me look at some of my Angel stacks. Who did I get to more of? That is going to be Gio Urshela for me. I prefer Gio Urshela to Rengifo. Seth1374. Seth always comes with good questions. Good to see him watching baseball, by the way. My wife's boyfriend bought a Zion Williamson jersey and said it's about time there are some true role models in professional sports. Agreed. Favorite cheap stack, Cubs or Cleveland? I like the Cubs quite a bit as this cheap stack today. Not just because of what their price points are, but more than anything because of how popular Reed Detmers is. North of 50% ownership on Reed Detmers. That's going to have me on the Cubs one of my most rostered stacks today.
Yeah, Cubs look fantastic in the top stack. So, and then as you said, you add in, that's not even factored in the leverage that you get on Detmer. So I'm with you on the Cubs there. Next
question that we have is from T. Lee. Sup, Greg? Favorite single entry teams? So for me, the team I'm going to be playing in single entry, as long as DraftKings doesn't crash right before lock and not let me upload my lineups like yesterday, it is going, which by the way, actually played out in my favor because I had a dummy set of lineups in. And it had just a ton of all of the chalk because it was dummy lineups. And the chalk all went berserk yesterday. So it was like I had like 85% Ellie De La Cruz. I had all of the Dodger stack. It was not what I wanted to play. And then ended up working out. But it was mostly because DraftKings crashed right before lock. And then I wasn't able to update anything. But that aside, if that does not happen again today, my single entry team is going to be the Chicago Cubs for a lot of the reasons that I've already pointed out. If you're playing one lineup today, Neil, who would you be going with? Would it be the Cubs? Would it be a different stack? Which way are you looking to go if you're building one lineup in a single entry?
I do like that Cubs call. Looks great in the top stacks tool. I think so. It would be between the Cubs. I would consider the Cubs there. It would probably be the Astros for me though, coming in at 12% ownership, 14% chance to be in the top stack against Jose Barrios. It's between those two though. It's very close, to be honest.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is that in single entry where a lot of the chalk gets magnified, Reed Detmers is probably going to be
good point. Even more owned,
70, 65% owned in single entry. And then you're going to get the Cubs hitters on a 4-game slate at like 4 or 5% ownership. So that's a real deciding factor for me. In large field tournaments, if I was only playing one lineup, it would actually still probably be the Cubs. But in that kind of scenario too, I think you can make a case for the Houston Astros you just brought up. By the way, we just got an ownership update. If you want to refresh, we have that there now, and that now takes into account the new lineup for the Cubs and also moves around some other ownership on the slate as well. So something to just take note of, guys. Refresh the ownership that we have. Let's see, do we have any other questions? Yes. Kazul Elitis says, is 3-3-2 okay to play on a small slate like this? He has a Toronto Angels Braves stacks specifically. I do not build 3-3-2 lineups. I build 5-man lineups, but if you're like hand building one lineup and it's still correlated like that, I don't have an issue with it.
I don't have an issue with it either. Yeah, it's honestly like this. It's interesting. I noticed in lineup generator on FanDuel, we do allow for like 4-2-2 as one of the types of builds you can do. I think it's, similar enough concept.
Well, FanDuel's also different because it doesn't allow for 5-man stacks.
Yeah, I know. But it's still like, we don't just do like 4-3 and 4-4. We have the 4-2-2 setting, which is similar.
Yeah, I end up making 4-2-2 lineups on FanDuel, sometimes 4-2, 4-3. I've been coming out with a lot of 4-3 lineups when I've been running them through the sim tool for FanDuel. But yeah, I think that for this particular slate, if you're hand building one lineup, Kazul, I don't think it's massively problematic. Let's pull up that lineup generator though. If you would be so kind.
I like
Jordan
it.
Klein. Yeah, Klein. I was combining words there. Let's go and look at the MLB lineup generator, where if you guys have not signed up yet and you want access, this is the easiest way to get yourself into like entry-level MLB DFS lineups that are going to be built for you and for cheap. You just click a couple buttons. It'll build up to 20 lineups through on DraftKings, FanDuel, both if you want, whatever is your site of preference. And you can upload them directly to DraftKings and FanDuel. You just decide what stack types you want to play. If you want to lock in any players, you could go about doing that. Up to 20 lineups built. They're going to be plus EV projected lineups, less than $5 when you sign up for the first time using the link that we have below. Let's start with DraftKings, Jordan. And I want to make contrarian lineups for today. I want to make some contrarian lineups and see what ends up popping up. This will also give me a real quick opportunity to update my lineups for the most recent run of ownership.
I'm trying to use the simulator right now. So I'm trying to get those lineups in right now as we're talking.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. I am running a set of lineups for, like I said, that most recent run of ownership. And let's see what ends up popping up. Jordan, save some lineups, discard some lineups. I want to see what we get to. What did you say happened? Oh, yeah, we do. We got team logos in there. So
yeah,
also,
I actually really like that.
Yeah, very clean looking. Very clean. Very fresh. Still got to even making contrarian lineups. We got to a bunch of Strider here. We did get underweight to the field on Reed Detmers here, which, by the way, this is more in line with what my Reed Detmers exposure is going to be, probably around 30%. I'll see what that ends up changing now that we have, an updated Cubs lineup. I'm going to be underweight to the field to Reed Detmers. I'm going to be overweight to the field to the Cubs. We'll end up seeing how that ends up being, though, with the new, with the new Cubs lineup, where all of it shakes out. But let's see. What do we get? We did get to, it looks like, a decent amount of Cubs here relative to ownership. Are you taking note of that, Neil? We got Yan Gomes in there, Ian Happ.
Really? All right. Good to see.
Scroll to the top. Who are the other hitters we had towards the top there, Jordan? Guardians. Ahmed Rosario, Stephen Kwan, Josh Naylor. So it looks like 3 teams we got to predominantly as stacks here. We got to the Guardians, the Angels, and the Cubs. Those are the 3 stacks we're getting to in the lineup generator.
Okay. Guardians,
Justin Smith
Angels,
saying, what do you mean new? What changed? What changed is that the Cubs have 2 catchers hitting in the middle of their order, which is going to just change. Like when I ran my initial set of lineups, I actually had Yan Gomes as my most popular hitter. That's not going to be the case anymore, just because there's 2 Cubs catchers to consider now.
Yeah, it does it makes it a little bit tougher that there's 2 different catchers.
What else is in there? Keep scrolling down, Jordan. So we got to Strider, Framber Valdez, Reed Detmers, Jose Berrios is another pitcher. Yeah, so interesting. So we did not actually Savali there. Yes, we did not get to the 4K pitcher really at all today. At least not when we were. Oh, there's one lineup with them where we got to Dermody, 6%. So yeah, not all that much. I also anticipate I'm going to get to less than 10% of him. Josh Gillum saying, Greg, they played 2 catchers for like a week straight. All right, well, the projected lineup didn't have both catchers in today. Anything else you see here that stands out? If not, we'll go over to FanDuel.
Let's see. What can you scroll to the top, Jordan? Also, what type of lineups do we do here?
These were contrarian lineups.
Okay, so we only got to 88% Spencer Strider. So if you want to get to away from some of your Strider, because I ran literally 60 lineups and never found one that did not have Strider earlier. So apparently you can do it within the contrarian lineups. I was curious about that. Yeah, I mean, if these were my lineups, I would probably go back and try to flatten it out, get rid of some of the Guardians here. But yeah, these are some of the teams that we like, the teams that we want to target. Looks good to me.
All right, so let's go and build some lineups on FanDuel, and also let's make some contrarian FanDuel lineups. All stack types, contrarian. I'm curious to see where we end up getting to on. I just realized also the FanDuel slate is already locked, so maybe this isn't the best practice in the world, but
right.
I still think it's of interest to people just to know that we have access to both. But anyway, Strider, we ended up getting to a shit ton of, and then yeah, this was kind of a dumb practice because we're getting to Zach McKinstry, Akil Badus. We're getting to Tiger stacks, and that game has already started. Let's see how the game is going. All right. So the score of that game is 0-0 in the third inning. All right. Nothing much to talk about here, Jordan. The slate is already locked, but just wanted to run it through so we could show people that we've got FanDuel utility as well for the lineup generator. Talk about stacks. Talk about some stacks, Neil. Oh, also, I wanted to once again just point out, sponsored by Prize Picks today. If you guys want to sign up at Prize Picks, a couple reasons to do so. Number one, you're going to get up to $100 bonus on your first deposit. You're also going to get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Also, you're going to see a lot of discounted deals on here. Spencer Strider, 6.5 strikeouts. Verlander, 4 strikeouts. Framber Valdez, 3.5. I like the overs on all of those. If you had to pick one of these discounts, Neil, which would you pick over at Prize Picks?
Probably Strider, to be honest, at 6.5. I mean, I don't know. It's tough because he is playing the Mets, but the Mets are without Pete Alonso, a little bit of a watered down lineup. Yeah, I'll go with Strider here. How about you?
It's hard not to go with Strider. You know, most sports books have Strider's over-under strikeouts at 8.5. He went on that run where he had was like the most consecutive starts with 10 plus strikeouts that he had going earlier in the year. It doesn't matter how difficult the matchup is for him. He is such a good pitcher that it just rarely ends up happening. You don't get a good strikeout outing from Spencer Strider. So give me the over 6.5 strikeouts. All the overs here obviously look good. They're all super discounted, but give me the Strider one because a little bit of bias on my part, but also, I mean, he's just so consistent as far as these strikeouts go. Also, something else, if you guys are in a state like myself, where you're not able to get access to Prize Picks, but you still want to find a way to claim your 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum, we've got our deal with BetMGM, where if you sign up at BetMGM, you make a deposit, just a few bucks, right? Throw $20 into BetMGM. You are going to also get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. Also, your first bet insured up to $1,000. Sign up using the link below or using that promo code Platinum Sub. 1 free month Stochastic Plus Platinum. If you're anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. Now let's go back and talk about some of the top stacks. Now, we've talked about a lot of them already as we've gone on, but I also want to refresh the ownership because it does look a little bit different than it did prior to the show starting. You and I were both on the same page. Do you want to be overweight to the field on the Cubs? What do you know with these popular stacks? Braves projected for nearly 20%. Oh, 17% ownership for the Braves, 16.8% for the Angels. Relative to those ownerships, what do you want to do with them in large field tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, I use the top stacks tool I feature it pretty prominently when I'm making my lineups, and both of these look like I want to take the unders here. We've got the Braves 17% projected ownership, 16% chance being the top stack, 6% chance being the top value stack. Across the board there we have negative leverage, so I'd like to take the under on I'd like to be under the field on the Braves at 17%. Doesn't mean that I'm not playing them at all, doesn't mean I'm full fading them, but they're probably not going to be one of my highest exposed full stacks, like primary stacks. I might play them as one-offs, might play them as my secondary stack, but going to be underweight to the field in terms of primary stacks. Angels similarly have negative leverage, 17% projected ownership, 15% chance to be in the top stack. So I'm probably going to end up underweight to the field on the Angels. Not like a huge stance. I'm not trying to go like, 4% of these teams, but like if I get to 12% of Atlanta, 12% of the Angels, that's probably where I would like to be here. How are you approaching them?
Yeah, so when I was running my lineups before this, and this isn't going to change all that much, I got to about 10% of each of these teams. The two stacks that I ended up getting to the most of, by far, number one was the Cubs. This is going to be the team I get the most exposure to for all the reasons I've already. I don't want to reiterate the same exact points, but a lot of ownership going to Reed Detmers. I think it makes sense to stack against them in large field tournaments. The other one, too, is the Mets. I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Spencer Strider. We've got a lot of positive leverage on the Mets. By far, the number one leverage stack in the top stacks tool. Now, obviously, the concern here is that they're going up against Spencer Strider. He's the best pitcher on the slate. But, there's a lot of variance in MLB DFS. And this is a spot where if you have a slate that's this small, and you could roster the Mets at this much less ownership than every other team, and they're going up against a pitcher who's so much more popular than every other pitcher, it's just going to make sense more often than not. And it is, I know it's uncomfortable, but if you played this 4-game slate and consistently stacked against a pitcher like Spencer Strider with an offense like the Mets, you're going to come out ahead in large field tournaments more often than not. No reason to do it in small field tournaments. No reason to do it in cash games or anything like that. But if you're playing the relay throw, your best chance of winning is going to be stacking against the super popular pitchers. It's the best way to get leverage today. It's what our top stacks tool shows. It's what our top pitchers tool shows. It's what our sims show out when you end up running lineups through them. So I'm going to be overweight to the field on the Cubs and the Mets for that reason. Are you going to be playing any Mets stacks, or is it just Strider's so good, there's such a safety with the fantasy points that you're just not even going to consider New York?
So I agree with your reasoning 100%. It looks good in the top stacks with 5% projected ownership for the Mets, 10% chance to be in the top value stack, and 9% chance to be in the top stack. So in my classic way of building, I probably would be overweight to the field on the Mets. I don't know because I am actually trying to run the simulator. I'm going to kind of see what comes out, see if any of my Mets lineups pop. If they do, totally willing to go there. I agree with you. Great place to go. I'm probably not playing them in single entry. It feels unlikely that they're going to put up, 10 plus runs against Strider. But again, part of the reason that they look better on a 4-game slate is it's very possible that no team puts up more than like 5 runs. And certainly the Mets could put up 5 runs and be the best, a couple home runs, be the best from that perspective. So I'm not trying to go crazy, play a ton of Mets against Spencer Strider. I'm playing a ton of Strider, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of merit. I agree with what you're saying 100%. And, that part of the appeal here is that the Mets could, Strider, they could do fairly well against Strider, maybe put up 2 runs on Strider, 5 innings, get him through 100 pitches, and then Strider gets pulled to get to the bullpen. That's where they could really pounce. They don't have to have a great game on a 4-game slate to be the best stack. So definitely some interest there, but not going to force them into my lineups either.
Yeah, it's not really a force. It's like, so when I ran my lineups through the Sims, there's only 2 stacks that end up being positive ROI stacks to play today in large field tournaments. It was the Mets, it was the Cubs. Everything else ended up being a negative ROI stack. So I'm playing, like I said, a lot more Cubs than any other team, but I'm underweight to every stack that is not the Mets and the Cubs. Doesn't mean that I'm not playing them. Like, there's no team that I got 0% of, but Braves, closer to 10% of, Angels, closer to 10% of, and there's no other teams that I really got to a bunch of. The other one too, Cleveland Guardians. This is a really tricky team to figure out. So there's a bunch of hitters from this team that I got to as individual one-offs. I didn't play quite as many stacks of them, but this is another team too. I actually ended up being the most aggressively underweight to Cleveland, ended up with about 5% of stacks of them. Like I said, the one thing that was kind of funny about it is the individual hitters, I was still about even with the field too, just less stacks of them. So what do you make of the Cleveland Guardians going up against a pitcher in Matt Dermody, who almost certainly is what I would consider a quadruple A pitcher, right? Good enough to be successful in the minor leagues, but probably not major league caliber. He's somewhere in between. He's 32 years old. He's toiled in the minor leagues. So the team found value in keeping him around, but he was never good enough to really get called up to the big leagues. So he's a replacement level player in all the classic way. I just hope that he's able to pitch decently enough to not get absolutely destroyed. And him getting destroyed is definitely one of the possible outcomes. But more Cleveland is one-offs than stacks for me. But nearly 18% projected ownership, actually the most popular team on the entire slate now in Cleveland. What do you make of them relative to like the Braves and the Angels?
Yeah, so they obviously look good. So I'm looking at the top stacks tool. We have Cleveland with 18% projected ownership, 25% chance to be in the top value stack, 14% chance to be in the top stack overall. I think that I probably want to be a little bit underweight to the field in terms of primary stacks for Cleveland. I think I'd be more inclined to use Cleveland as my secondary stack. So, 2 or 3 bats for Cleveland, maybe in some 4-4 stacks as well. It just feels like everybody on Cleveland, just looking across all of the bats, we don't have anybody who's under. I guess we do have the 9-hole. We have Cam Gallagher, the catcher, getting 6% ownership. So I guess you can go there to save a little bit of projected ownership. Miles Straw at 12%. So, I guess at the end of the order, we have a few bats that are a little bit lower owned. But in general, I think that I'd be more inclined to not full 5 stack Cleveland. I'm going to be underweight to the field in terms of using them as my primary stack. I'll probably have them some as my secondary stack, some one-offs, because they look great here. As you said, we don't really know much about Matt Dermody. We don't think that he's going to be a great, as you said, a 32-year-old rookie, probably not going to be a great major league pitcher. But I'd be more inclined to go to, even Stephen Kwan is only getting 14% projected ownership. There are ways to play Cleveland that you're not playing like crazy high ownership. But I'm probably less inclined to go to, a 5-man stack that includes all of Rosario, Jose Ramirez, Andre Jimenez, Josh Bell. Like if you include all of the guys who are getting more ownership, it's going to be a little bit tougher to get unique.
So I just did an updated run in the sim with all of our most recent ownership and all that, all the lineups, the 5-man stack ROIs. This is what was projected. I got to the Cubs as a 12.2% positive ROI stack as a 5-man stack. The Mets, 7.6% positive ROI. Every other stack negatively leveraged. The most negatively projected ROI stack on the entire slate ended up being the Boston Red Sox in my run. And like I said, the Cubs #1. So I like the Cubs a whole bunch. Actually, I'm curious. Let's see. Which catcher did I get to more? I still got to more of Gomes than of Amaya. Yeah. I got to about twice as much Gomes as what I got to Amaya. So if anybody's of interest or wondering, like, hey, which Cubs catcher do I prefer? It is Yan Gomes for those Cubs lineups. One question in Discord here, and then we will wrap up. GG123 wants to know Josh Bell or Cassis as a one-off. Obviously, it's baseball, so who the fuck knows? But what does your gut say? I have more exposure to Josh Bell, so I'm going to answer Josh Bell. I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Josh Bell or who?
Josh Bell or Tristan Cassis, he asked. I have more of Josh Bell.
I also have more of Josh Bell by triple the amount. I guess I also currently that's I'm trying to match the field with my stack ownership to the best of my ability without adjusting for individual player ownership. So, but yeah, I'm getting to Josh Bell clearly projects better.
All right. And that is going to do it for us today, guys. If you've not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching. Shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring the show today. Good luck with all of your lineups today, guys. And tomorrow night, basketball's back. So go check that out. Have a good one. See you back here tomorrow.